Recycling's Dirty Little Secrets. Truth Behind Recycling, Module 2. This isn't your average put your bottles here and cans there workshop. This is a behind the scenes look at what really happens after the blue bin leaves your curb. The stuff most people never see and some people don't want you to know. Why it matters. Let's be real. This class is going to be a bit of a downer. I'm going to show you some uncomfortable truths about recycling, but I promise it's not to leave you hopeless. It's to arm you with knowledge that we all need if we're going to inspire the next generation of problem solvers. Here's why it matters to you, sitting in that chair right now. If you believe that recycling is handled, you stop thinking about solutions. And when entire communities think that way, the problem festers under the surface until it's too big to ignore. We simply cannot afford that type of mental autopilot. Knowing the cracks in the systems mean you have the power to fill them, and it means you can challenge old ideas, push for better designs, and rethink the way we use and reuse our resources. This is about shaking up the status quo so that your voice, your vote, your creativity, and your influence can actually make a change. It's about refusing to hand off the problem and hoping somebody else will solve it. Yes, we're going to peel back the layers on a flawed system, but we're going to do it to spark action, not despair. Energy and water costs. How clean recycling actually burns through resources. Recycling plants guzzle massive amounts of water for cleaning and sorting. High heat plus heavy machinery makes big electricity bills and fossil fuel use. And energy use often outweighs the savings for low quality and contaminated materials. When we think recycling, sometimes, admittedly, I picture a magical low impact process, a quick wash, a spin through machine, and voila, a brand new product ready to go. But in reality, I am dead wrong. Cleaning and sorting recyclables is incredibly resource hungry. Recycling plants run industrial washers, conveyor belts, shredders, and smelters that require huge volumes in water and electricity. The jar that you rinse at home, multiply that by millions of households every day. Not even just millions of jars, but households of jars. And then you're talking about a water footprint large enough to supply entire cities. Then there's the power. Heating metals, breaking down plastics, and running massive facilities burns through fossil fuels like there's no tomorrow. And for some low-grade materials or contaminated loads, the energy and water used to recycle them can actually be greater than making the same product from scratch. Emissions reality check. Transporting, processing, and manufacturing impacts. Materials often travel thousands of miles before processing. Transport trucks, ships, and trains pump CO2 into the atmosphere, and processing still releases greenhouse gases and chemical pollutants. We often imagine recycling as a tidy local process. Drop it in the blue bin, it goes to a nearby plant, comes back as something useful. But the truth is, many recyclables go on a full-blown world tour before they ever turn into something new. Trucks pick them up, haul them to sorting centers, often to ports, and then massive freight ships that burn some of the dirtiest fuel on Earth. And the journey doesn't end there. Processing facilities themselves are major emitters, releasing greenhouse gases during the melting, pulping, and chemical breakdown stages. Even the most green recycling loops have carbon cost, and in some cases, that cost rivals or exceeds manufacturing new items. Recycling is not carbon neutral. It is carbon heavy, just in a different way than landfilling. The not so green supply chain. How waste gets a free ride across oceans. Wealthy nations offload waste to poorer countries for cheap processing. Ocean freight emissions are rarely counted in official recycling stats, and many imports are contaminated and end up dumped or burned aboard. Here's one of recycling's dirty little secrets. It's not just a system, it's a trade route. Wealthy countries, including Canada and the US, regularly ship their recyclables to countries with lower labor costs, environmental laws, and fewer safeguards. On paper, it's efficient, but in reality, we are exporting our waste problem. And while these shipments are logged as recycled in our statistics, many of them are contaminated, making them impossible to process. That means they often end up dumped in open landfills, or worse, burned in the open air, causing far more pollution than if we'd have just handled it ourselves. Add in the massive unaccounted for emissions from ocean freights, and you start to see the truth. It's not just a supply chain, it's a supply shame. On a curb to nowhere. You've done your part, you've sorted, you've cleaned, you've put it at the curb. But what's the journey from there? It's not as straightforward as you've been led to believe. In this section, we're going to track where recycling actually goes, why contamination sabotages the system, and how recyclable doesn't always mean recycled. Quality control failures. Why contamination ruins recovery rates. Food, liquid, and non-recyclables damage entire batches. Sorting systems can't always detect mixed or dirty materials, and contaminated loads are often rejected and landfilled. Recycling works only when the input is clean and consistent. But here's the problem. People are human. Food scraps, coffee residue, greasy pizza boxes, and non-recyclable plastics sneak in all the time. Even with advanced sorting systems, mixed or dirty materials often slip through, contaminating whole batches. And in large-scale recycling, one bad load can cause thousands of pounds of material to be rejected. These rejected loads don't get a second chance. They head straight to the landfill or the incinerator. So the hopeful wish cycling, being tossing something in the bin and just hoping it's recyclable, often backfires and makes recovery rates plummet. Landfill detour. How recyclables end up buried anyway. Not all materials have a market demand for resale. Low-value recyclables often cost more to process than to dump, and economic shifts turn recyclable items into landfill fodder overnight. Just because something can be recycled doesn't mean that it will be. The recycling system is ultimately a business, as sad and disappointing as that is. And if there's no market for a particular material, like certain plastics, it's often cheaper to send it straight to the landfill. Economic downturns, oil prices, and shifts in manufacturing can all affect the value of recycled materials. One month, a type of plastic might be in high demand, and the next, it's landfill bound, because virgin material suddenly became cheaper to buy. This means perfectly good recyclable items often bypass the recycling process entirely and end up buried in the same place as your trash. The label recyclable does not guarantee a happy ending, it's just the possibility of one, if the economics line up. The myth of infinity. The recycling logo is beautiful. It's three neat arrows chasing each other forever, but it's kind of a lie. Materials don't last forever, and neither does that loop. In this section, we'll break down the physical limits of our material, why the loop leaks, and why turning bottles into park benches is still only a temporary win. Material limits. How plastic, paper, and metal degrade after each cycle. Plastic breaks down in quality and strength each time it's recycled. Paper fibers shorten with each pass, limiting reuse to a handful of cycles. And metals fare much better, but contamination will still reduce that quality over time. A lot of people think materials can be recycled forever, but the truth is most have a built-in expiration date. Plastic is especially fragile. Every time it's melted and remolded, the polymer chains get shorter, making the plastic weaker and less usable. That's why a soda bottle rarely comes as another soda bottle. It's more likely to become something of lower quality. Paper has a similar problem. Each time it's recycled, the fibers get shorter and weaker until they can't hold together anymore, usually about 5 to 7 cycles. It does get downcycled into like cardboard and egg cartons and such, but those can only get recycled so many times until they simply can't. Metals are the big recycler's pride because they can technically be reused many times, but then there's contamination from coating, paints, mixed alloys. All of this can downgrade their quality. The bottom line, Nothing gets endless do-overs in the real world. Infinite loop illusion. Why recycling can't fully close the loop. Recycling processes always lose some material to waste. Virgin materials are often needed to maintain product quality, and demand for products often outpaces what recycling can supply. You've probably seen the recycling symbol, this cute little triangle chasing itself in a perfect loop, and the visual is the equivalent of, don't worry, it all comes back around. But in reality, that loop leaks. Every recycling process loses some material along the way, whether through contamination, processing waste, or sheer inefficiency. To make up for those losses, manufacturers often mix in virgin materials to maintain strength, purity, and appearance. And because consumer demand is constantly growing, recycling alone can't keep up. While we always need new raw material to meet production needs, this means that even the best recycling system can't completely close the loop. The downcycling dilemma. Turning bottles into park benches isn't a win forever. Many recycled products are actually lower grade than the original. Downcycled items are often not recyclable themselves, and this delays but does not prevent eventual landfill disposal. When plastic bottles become a park bench, it sounds like a win, and it totally is, but just kind of in the short run. That bench can't be turned back into another bottle or something else. Most downcycled products are made from mixed or degraded materials that can't be recycled again. That means downcycling is really just kicking the can, or in this case the bottle, down the road. Eventually that bench will crack, fade, and head to the landfill just like the original bottle would have. It's better than immediate disposal, for sure, but it's not the same as a true closed loop. Downcycling is more of a slow motion waste stream than a solution. So this total downer of a module begs one clear question. Why bother? Why bother now? Why should people still recycle? Well, because it's insanely important. Really, really important. Recycling slows resource extraction and buys time for better solutions. It also means that proper recycling can prevent unnecessary landfill waste and pollution. And it keeps materials in use longer, reducing the demand for virgin resources, among many other reasons. Yes, the system is flawed. And yes, a lot of recyclable material gets wasted, shipped, or downcycled. But here's the key. Every single cycle matters. Recycling is not a perfect solution, that's the point, but it is a pressure valve. Every can, every bottle, every sheet of paper that gets reused just delays that need to rip a new resource out of the earth. Think about it like treading water while you wait for a rescue boat. You're not at the shore yet, but you keep your head above water until something better comes along. The more people recycle and recycle correctly, the more time we have to push for bigger and better systems. How to make it count. Number 1, put only clean, accepted materials into the bin. Number 2, learn your local recycling rules because they are not all the same. And number 3, buy recycled content products to create demand for recycled materials. Recycling right is like voting. One person's action might feel small, but together it definitely changes the outcome. If you put dirty, non-recyclable, or wish-cycled items into the bin, you're not helping. You're contaminating the entire batch. Take a few minutes to learn your community's actual recycling list. It's not glamorous, but it makes your efforts work. And don't just stop at tossing things in the bin. Look for products made from recycling materials. And don't be shy to buy secondhand goods. If nobody buys recycled content items, the market for recyclables dries up, and all that sorting is for nothing.